Good morning, members of MAG Solid Waste Advisory Committee. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a request to speak card located on the meeting room counter and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the meeting room counter. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please respond. Richard Allen.
Here.
Wayman Allen. Sherry Collins.
Here.
Thank you. Wendy Kreitz. Mike Denby. Ron Gritman.
Here.
Thank you. Jack Mincallis. Adam Kurtz.
Here.
Thank you. Simon Lara.
Here.
Thank you. Paul Montes. I'm sorry, Paul Montes. Amy Moreno.
Here.
Thank you. Felipe Moreno. Robert Parks.
Here.
Thank you. Aaron Redmond.
Here.
Thank you. Aaron Red. Nick Russo. Nick Russo. JB Shaw. Ramona Simpson.
Here.
Thank you. Robert Stratman.
Here.
Thank you. Robert Vondenau.
Here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Our next item is call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to the audience unless the chair requests an exception to the limit. This time I have not received any request to speaker cards for the call to the audience. MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. As noted in today's agenda, changes have been made to the process for sharing written comments, which are now provided to the committee in advance of the meeting for consideration. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with committee members and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Staff, have we received any online comments for the call to the audience?
Madam Chair, we did not receive any online comments.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 13th, 2023 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Prior to approval, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on agenda item 3? Doesn't look like I have received any requests to speak cards for this agenda item. MAG staff, have you received any online written comments for the agenda item?
Madam Chair, we did not receive any online written comments.
Is there a motion to approve the June 12th, 2023 meeting minutes? I'm sorry, I noticed I have June 12th and June 13th separate dates on here. They are June 13th.
This is Nick Russo with El Mirage. I move to approve the meeting minutes from the June 13th meeting.
So we have a motion from Nick Russo and the second.
This is Bobby Parks. I second that motion.
Thank you, Robert. Robert Parks, second. We have those participating in the meeting online now to take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. We need to see the faces of everyone to participate in the voice vote. This is to speed up the voting process. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on the cameras. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's names. Cameras are not on. Thank you, everyone. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor, say aye.
Let me ask you a question, Chris,
Aye.
may or may not.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Those who wish to abstain
message for you.
from the vote, say abstain. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their camera?
One moment, please. Aaron Redmond, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a unanimous vote.
Thank you. Our first item in the agenda is about electric vehicles in solid waste, or should say first item for topic discussion. We have Brent Rogers from Republic Services. Brent Rogers is the Vice President of Operations Technology, responsible for defining and implementing Republic Services fleet technology and electrification strategy, including the management of electric vehicle partners, charging infrastructure, and fleet deployment. Brent joined Republic Services in 2021 after 13 years developing cutting-edge electric and autonomous vehicle technology for Toyota, GM, and Cruise. Brent earned his Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and Master's in Energy Systems Engineering from the University of Michigan.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction. Really appreciate it. And thanks for having me here today to talk to you about some pretty cool Republic Services initiatives. For background, Republic Services is an environmental services company. We have about 40,000 employees spanning across 49 states. In the state of Arizona, that's actually where our headquarters is, and we have about 5,000 employees here. So yeah, my background is in engineering, so it's been pretty exciting to come to this industry and kind of see what we can do in the EV space. And Republic Services has done an awesome job pushing this technology forward. Next slide. So our CEO has been pretty vocal about electrification. This is one of his quotes that's out there, but he sees electrification as a place to improve our customer experience, improve our driver experience, and really overall reduce our emissions. And recently he's come out with some LinkedIn posts and has been really verbal about one of our targets that's out there, that 50% of our fleet purchase to be electric by 2028. So really exciting stuff, very challenging initiative, and it's kind of on me to figure out how to do that. But it's been great support on the company, and we're making really awesome strides and progress doing this. Next slide. And so on here, what I have is a high level overview of really the benefits of electrification. So on the customer side, we have a lot of customers out there asking for an improved sustainability profile. And also there's a lot of regulatory requirements that are being set. So there's about 15 states in rulemaking right now for the Advanced Clean Truck Rule, as well as one state, California, who's actually adopted Advanced Clean Fleet Rule. And so those rules either determine on how many trucks an OEM needs to sell that are zero emissions, or how many trucks a fleet needs to operate that are zero emissions. Overall, I mean, this is a huge improvement for the environment. It's actually zero tailpipe emissions. The next slide, I actually dig into this a little deeper, so I'll leave that one alone for right now. On the driver's side, there's a huge opportunity to actually improve safety, improve the driver experience, and overall improve driver retention. That's really comes to starting with a clean slate. So a lot of trucks out there, and everyone's probably familiar with the hump inside the cab. So that's actually where your engine and CNG components are at. On an EV, if you do a ground up design, you can actually eliminate some parts. So you're actually eliminating the engine from the cab, which eliminates a heat source. So now that cab is a lot cooler place for the driver. Additionally, you're eliminating something that produces noise. And so the drivers can actually hear their environments a lot better. And we actually have direct feedback from our drivers who are out in the field saying that they can hear their surroundings much better. It's just an improved experience overall. And really, we believe that this improved driver experience is going to retain our drivers a lot better going forward. Additionally, we received feedback about the torque. So there's been complaints about our drivers going from a diesel to CNG truck with a lack of torque as far as body operations and overall performance at a full payload. And one of the cool things about EVs is that they have instantaneous torque. So you have a very high torque even under a high payload. And we've seen actually body improvements. So now you have electric motors running your hydraulic pumps, which you have instantaneous torque there, so you don't have to spin up your engine. And so your compaction, your ejection, all that is faster, and you can actually compact more. And overall, what we are seeing is a reduced operations cost. So these trucks are really expensive. You know, these are up to 2 times the price as a diesel truck, but there are maintenance savings because you have fewer parts. So you don't have the engine, you don't have a transmission. A lot of these EVs actually have something called e-axles, where the motors are directly mounted to the axle, which opens up a lot of space in the chassis and the cab area. And then overall fuel savings. Electricity in general is less expensive, but the bigger thing is that EVs are more efficient. So they're going to require less fuel to do the same amount of work as a diesel or CNG truck. And feel free to ask questions as I'm going through this. It's more fun to talk to people than just stare at the screen the entire time too. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so what this is actually looking at the carbon intensity. And so this is the standard in how you look at emissions. And this is looking at how fuel is actually created until how fuel is used. And you can see traditionally, trucks that are using diesel are about 100 grams of CO2 equivalent per megajoule. So that's kind of your baseline. Republic Services is about 25% CNG, and we use renewable CNG. You can see that's about a 60% improvement over diesel. And so a way to reduce emissions even more is going electric. And the easiest way to look at it is with renewable electricity. So if you're using 100% renewable electricity, you have zero emissions creating that electricity, and you have zero emissions using that electricity. Now, in reality, a lot of electricity is going to come from the grid. And so on here, I have the California grid just as an example. And you can see that even using the California grid, it's about an 85% improvement over diesel, and that's the emissions reduction. But again, this really comes down to EVs using less energy. So if you were to put diesel and you could instantaneously create electricity out of it, you'd be using about 1/4 the amount of diesel to do the exact same route as you would in an EV. So huge efficiency improvements, and that really helps you with your fuel cost savings and your emissions reduction. Next slide. One of the big hindrances to electrification is that charging infrastructure piece. And so on here, I have some examples of what charging infrastructure looks like. So these are big trucks. So we're talking like 400 to 600 kilowatt hour battery packs. And for reference, that's probably Your average EV these days is probably around 100 kilowatt hours. So that's 4 to 6 times your average EV that's on the road. So huge battery packs on these. And so you need quite a bit of power in order to charge them. In order to charge these vehicles at a reliable rate, you need to use something called DC. So you're going to DC charge, which are the bigger chargers. And that requires working with the utilities to bring in a transformer, bring in switch gear, and then you're going to lay conduit underground. And then you're going to place chargers where your trucks are going to park. What we do here is overall, we look at feasibility studies. That just means we're going out to the site and seeing whether or not the utility can provide power, when they can provide power. And we're seeing that taking about 3 months in order to conduct that study. Then we have a permitting phase, and depending on which state you're working in, depends on how fast permitting actually works. And then the utility upgrade. And so in some situations, if you're just placing a few trucks, you probably don't have to do a utility upgrade. You can just hook in a couple chargers and charge your couple trucks right off the existing power on site. And so then your utility upgrades a really short lead time. Other times, if you're doing bigger fleets, like a 30, 50 truck fleet or bigger than that, you're going to have to bring in additional primary power, and that's going to extend this lead time. So bringing in primary power potentially could take, a couple years instead of months. Then on the construction side, we've actually seen that go fairly quickly once we get everything in line, and that's about 3 months. And so what we're actually doing is up here. So we originally started this electrification journey with the Mack truck in the lower right, and that was based in Hickory, North Carolina. That truck started in 2020. It was a Mack EV with Heil ASL. And we learned a ton by operating this vehicle, and we were able to do a lot of power draw measurements and gain confidence in electrification. Our next site that went into operation is in Boise, Idaho. In Boise, Idaho, we're operating Peterbilt EVs. And so we have rear load EVs there as well as side load. Learned a ton there, and we have a direct comparison between operations costs between an EV, CNG, and diesel trucks. And we've been very impressed by the reduced maintenance expense with those trucks out there, also the reduced fuel costs. One of the interesting things there is that we really haven't replaced the brakes on the trucks. And that's because the trucks out there are using their electric motors to actually slow down. So you have regenerative braking, which means you're using your friction discs less often. And so you have less often brake changes. And we actually notice that out there. And that's a real thing. It's very cool to see. More recently, we just launched operations in Anaheim, California. And so we have a Peterbilt ASL out there as well operating, really exceeding expectations. It's kind of optimal climate out there. And we're getting close to 100 miles, and we can do over 1,000 homes, probably potentially hit 1,200 homes with that truck. So we're really getting to a point where electrification can be a direct swap with some of the trucks we have out there, kind of our easier routes. But technology is progressing rapidly. And an example of that rapid progression of technology is our announcement with Oshkosh, where we work with them to collaborate on a fully integrated electric refuse truck. And actually the first prototype of this truck is going to be operating in Phoenix by the end of this year. So pretty excited to show that off and show what we're doing there. But the novel thing about this truck is that it was built ground up electric. So you don't have that doghouse in the cab. It's got a flat floor that you can shift side to side. The placement of the battery packs are optimized in order to reduce the overall mass of the truck in order to retain our payload, as well as the body is integrated with the chassis, which for background is not normal on these trucks. Normally you buy a chassis, then you buy whatever body you want, you mount them together. There's some integration issues that come with that. Whereas this truck, since Oshkosh is the parent company of McNeilus, one of the big body suppliers, they're actually built this ground intentionally to work directly with the McNeilus body and to fully optimize electrification. So we expect big things out of this truck. Really excited to start operating in Phoenix. And we choose these sites on these 4 factors on the right. We're really looking at where do the trucks work now and where does the future technology take us? And so we want to make sure everywhere we place these trucks that they will serve our customers appropriately. Additionally, we're looking for really good municipal partners. We want to go to places where people want EVs and they want to be ahead of that trend and that new technology. And then kind of the harder items is, we got to go to a place that actually has charging infrastructure. So if we can't get utility of power at a site, then we can't place EVs there in a rapid pace. And so we're really looking where utilities, municipal partners, truck performance are all working together, and then seeing if there's any incentives or grants as well that we can take advantage of by being early to this adoption of electrification. And that's it from a high level perspective. Any discussion topics or questions?
Hey, Brett, this is Bob with the City Surprise. Just a question. On all of those trucks, all the bodies are still running with hydraulics, right?
We do have some that do not run on hydraulics. So the one I showed in the previous slide are running on hydraulics. There is a body out there called the Heil Revamp, and that's all electric, and we'll have some of those in operation here shortly.
Yeah, I was just more kind of what are the talks with the body manufacturers and where they're at with their trying to apply that with their trucks. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I know about two. So the two we work with are Heil and McNeilus, and they're all actively working to optimize electrification. So one of the things is this is not simply putting an electric motor and hooking it up to the PTO and running it. That's not a very efficient way to run an electric truck. What these two companies are actually doing are custom building their motors to work directly with their bodies. And so when you buy their body, you're actually buying your motor and that whole kit with it, and then it taps into the chassis battery pack. And both companies have made huge strides in efficiency gains. And I've actually experienced it firsthand with the operations in Hickory and Boise to see the improvements over there, and I expect them to get better and better. But yeah, Heil and McNeilus are both doing really cool things in the electrification space from a body perspective.
One more question. What I'm sure you've done a lot of research on the end life of the batteries. What have you found on kind of what you guys have been seeing on end life of the batteries after they go bad?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we've only had a truck in operation since 2020. So I don't have any trucks in my hands that I would consider at end of life. I'll tell you this, that I expect these battery packs to last 10 or more years. And that's really through my experience in the rest of the industry. So depending on the chemistry of that battery pack and what the duty cycle is of the truck, you can determine what the battery life is going to be. And like I said, we fully anticipate these batteries lasting the life of the truck. Now, if they don't last the life of the truck, then that kind of blows up your whole total cost of ownership model. And so what I try to do is go out, try to get warranties that support that as well.
All right, thank you.
Brett, hey, Robert Vandenacker, City of Buckeye. Hey, so with our experience with electric vehicles in the summertime here in Arizona, the extreme heat has been real concerning. Has there been tests on these electric vehicles with the 120 plus potential heat that we have here in a normal summer in Arizona?
Hey, that's the main reason I'm running that prototype here. So I've done testing on other vehicles, not a refuse truck or things of this size. There's different types of things you can do to reduce the concern. And basically what you're referring to is power draw. So you kind of have an excessive power draw because you're using additional energy to cool the battery pack is also cool the driver. And so things that you can do to actually reduce that amount of energy used in a hot environment are preconditioning the vehicle. And so using wall power to make sure the battery pack's at the optimal temperature and the cab is at the optimal temperature before the driver gets in it. But I'm going to be running my own tests here. And if we sync up in a year, I'll be able to give you some direct insights from data that I've pulled. But overall, I expect it to operate fine in the hot environment based off of battery pack size, the amount of energy it takes to run a route, and the amount of energy I think the HVAC system is going to use. I think cold environments, honestly, are going to be more of a challenge for us to operate in, but I expect it to operate really well here in Phoenix. But that's my opinion. I'll have direct data for that next year.
Yeah, absolutely. The other issue then is just recharge, because recharging the battery in the high heat is also a wall to overcome.
Yeah, and it is. And the main reason for that is because not only are you putting electricity in the battery pack, you're using electricity to run the cooling system on the truck. And so you got to power the entire cooling system to keep the battery down to a temperature that doesn't allow you to go in the thermal runaway, and so that you can charge the battery pack fast. But yep, those are all valid concerns. And again, why I want to get some trucks here in Phoenix and get some high heat exposure to them.
Hi, Brett. This is Ramona from the town of Queen Creek. So I would be interested after you bring the truck to Phoenix. And of course, big thing with EV is range anxiety, right? And being in Queen Creek, that we're about an hour southeast Phoenix, and just trying to think of how far it could get to here and how much it could collect, and for it would need to go back and recharge. So I think that there's been some concern about how many collections you could do in a day under one charge. And so I think that will be interesting to see, like Robert said, in the middle of summer. And then how, now you've got to recharge overnight. So how many EVs do you need to do a route versus what we were currently doing?
Yeah, so the way we're modeling this all out is that, you have a really good idea what your miles and lifts are on your route. And what you can actually do is model, this is what I do, is model out the power draw and see how much energy you're gonna actually use to hit that miles, hit those lifts, as well as your big concern is that thermal energy usage because of the hot environment. You can model that, and that's what I use to determine what routes you go on. But as you said, this is not a one-for-one swap with every single truck in your fleet right now. What this is a one-for-one swap on your easiest routes. So, but that's where we're currently at in technology. And so what we're doing is cherry picking the easiest routes and making sure these trucks will be able to perform. But there's going to be huge advancements in technology over the next couple of years. That's going to make it easier and easier to put more EVs in without increasing your truck count and still completing the same number of routes. But you kind of have to be strategic with it. And it's not as simple as swapping every truck out and replacing with EV. So
I agree.
We're at that minimum viable product as I look at it. But there's going to be improvements that are going to make it easier to do.
And LG Battery is coming to Queen Creek, just to keep you in the loop there. And they are working on trying to make, I don't know, for this type of truck out the gate, but it's my understanding that they're working on trying to make something smaller, lighter, and that will last longer in the EV space. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. And then, of course, as others have said, we do need to figure out, since we're all in waste management here, the end of life or re-life or reuse or something along those lines. We kind of just need to think about what that will look like, so that we're prepared for in the 10 years, right? So that we're know how to handle those. We're also thinking, and I'm sure you guys are too, I'm over fleet in mine. We don't have trash trucks in-house, but just thinking about how you work on the EVs, making them a safe space, and then retraining staff who used to turn a wrench. Now, how do we design the mechanic space and the tools and the types of things that they will need to work on EVs? And so I am excited about both the challenges, because I think we'll find solutions, and how to make this work in we're a pretty tough environment out here in the West. So I think that will be good to have you get some experience out here and see how, and we're far away, right? We're far away from everything. So
yeah, honestly, I think that's the biggest challenge is the route distance out here.
Yeah,
it's a lot further than other states for sure. But I think you bring up a really good point about the technician space and how we're going to have a shift in technicians. And so a lot of these EVs we're deploying now, we have a lot of OEM support, and that's really to do any of the high voltage changes. So anything having to do with the axles, the motors, and things along those lines. But there are a lot of pieces to this that are the same. So a lot of the bodies we're currently running are hydraulic still, but they have the electric motors attached to them. So all of your body maintenance is going to be the same. Your tire maintenance is the same. Your brake maintenance is the same, except you're going to replace them less often because of the regen. And so it's not a complete shift in the way you do maintenance, but it's going to be a reduced amount of maintenance required because of the reduced amount of parts. But then the complex parts, which I think you're more interested in, is going to require more skilled technicians in specific areas. One of the things Republic is doing is that we actually have electrification courses at our Tech Institute. And so we're going to try to get our technicians up to speed and give them classes in order to get them there.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and safety is a real concern. How do you keep the technician safe, but also not burn your facility down? So,
Yeah,
you
no
know,
one wants that. High
two
voltage
things.
safety disabled training would be the number one training.
that would be it right there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions? Thank you, Brett. Could you share, if you're not able to do now, Brett, can send something to our committee regarding contact information for you? Should anyone think of a question after the presentation or in the next few days?
Yeah, I can do that. No problem.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Information. Okay, next up, we have Adam Kurtz and Chris Annual. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that correctly, of City of Goodyear, to talk about inactive and past due waste accounts.
Hello, everybody. It's Adam Kurtz, Solid Waste Superintendent for City of Goodyear. Was asked to discuss inactive accounts for our solid waste program. This may or may not apply to some of the other municipalities in this group, but this is definitely an issue that we face where we're at dealing with multiple water providers. And I'll just be completely upfront right out the gate. The City of Goodyear only does water services in a portion of the city. We have three different private water providers, and in those areas we only provide solid waste services, so it makes it rather difficult for us to maintain those account because obviously when somebody's not paying for service, they typically get their water shut off when you control all the utilities. So this has been an issue that we quickly realized back in 2006 when we did the curbside rollout. We didn't realize how many inactive accounts we had to begin with until we started to really start digging into our accounts. So next slide, please. So again, why is this a problem? Well, for us, in our case, this is lost revenues. It's also issues for residents receiving services for free, essentially. So in some areas, obviously, it's not fair for everybody to pay and then some not pay. So and then in some cases, we'll have where residents are getting free service. It's a matter of like a whole cul-de-sac where one resident stops paying and then the rest of them, hey, guess what? I can skip out on that $20 a month solid waste fee if I just stop paying the city. So it encourages illegal dumping. So in some cases, we have residents that do not have service, or they move into a home and they don't have containers, and they start to use their neighbors' containers, or in some cases where we have multifamily or shared driveways, they'll just use whatever containers at the end of the driveway. Another problem, it's budgeting challenges for us, not knowing exactly how many accounts we're going to have. So we contract our curbside collection through Waste Connections. So just trying to anticipate how many active accounts we're going to have for the future, trying to do forecasting. It's rather difficult when you don't know the exact number of accounts you have. And not only that, but we manage the container program. So we also need to account for containers as well. And increased container theft. We've had residents in some cases just go out and help themselves to containers that are out in the field. We do track them by serial number, so in some cases we're able to retrieve those, and in some cases we have to call PD to go out and retrieve them for us if they don't want to put them out or we can't get them at the curb. So next slide, please. So challenges, like I mentioned before, City of Goodyear does not control all the utilities north of the I-10 in our case. We have 3 different water providers. We have EPCOR, Liberty, and Arizona Water. And it's really hard for us to identify, working with those private companies, when there's new accounts, when there's shutoffs, when there's turn-ons. And I'll discuss a little bit on how we've tackled that challenge. But again, not controlling the utilities and having that information up to date does create problems for us. We do have a lot of snowbirds or seasonal visitors in some of these areas. So we have a high turnover. We're noticing an uptick in rentals as well. So we have a lot of challenges with those as well. And then staffing, just to try to tackle the monitoring of those accounts and keep track of that just requires staff time and a lot of effort. Next slide, please. So again, I've kind of talked a little bit about some of the history, how we don't monitor, or we don't have those accounts north of the freeway, those utilities. We've tried several different methods to try to tackle the issue. We've gone so far as to try to compel the private companies, water companies, to, since they operate within the city, that they have to provide us the account information, and that didn't go over so well. And again, even so far as to discuss adding the solid waste fees to property tax, which I thought it was like pulling teeth in that conversation. So it's not a very popular conversation with council. So we didn't go that route either. But we needed to add positions. We knew that to even tackle the issue or identify the problem. And again, I didn't even mention. So right now, in our particular city, we have over 10,000, I think we're up to 13,000 accounts that are in this inactive or north of the freeway case with the different utilities. So as you can imagine, that makes up 2 of our service days when we service. So that's a lot of accounts that we're trying to track. We utilize our inspectors to kind of monitor that side of the house when they're out there doing that. First of all, too, we had to prove that this was an issue. So back to the first slide, when I talked about the lost revenues, when we brought it to their attention that we had over 1,000 accounts that were inactive in our system but could potentially be using service, that was an eye-opener for our council and our leadership. So I had to make sure that they understood that any actions that we did out in the field that would be to benefit the city, and also that there could be some pushback from residents that potentially didn't understand the process. We also had to get our finance department involved in this, obviously, since they are the ones that collect the money. We've had to work with them to get the spreadsheets with the information on these inactives. And then it was just an education process for residents. So we had to, first of all, we had to notify them that this could be a potential problem in their area. We did this through container information. So we've actually stamped our city code. So we were managed to get our city codes updated. That was one of the important things we did, was to get our updated city code to give us the ability to the tools we needed to do enforcement on inactive accounts. And then, of course, we worked with finance, and we ensured that the CSRs were ready for any calls or anything that was coming in once we started pushing out the information to these residents. And then we actually did an enforcement process. So once we got the buy-in from city manager and council, we went ahead and did a complete push on these inactive accounts. We gave them an education process. We came up with tags. This was all within the last year. So we started again, it's been an ongoing issue, but we've never focused on the inactives. And this took both my inspectors, and a supervisor and CSRs to kind of tag team on this, and working with the private companies. We did manage to get some help from the private companies to get some information from them. And there's some other things that we did that helped in that process as well. But as far as the education process, again, we rolled this information out to the residents. We notified them that they had to sign up for service. We did follow-ups with them, and then in extreme cases, we had to pull containers in some cases, and obviously at that point, then they would want to sign up for service. So next slide, please. So the important thing that we've learned over this past year of doing this hardcore push on inactive accounts is that we've had to do audits moving forward. So we noticed that there's trends. We notice, again, what I mentioned earlier, we have seasonal residents or renters that come in, they'll stay for 3 months and then they'll leave, and then they'll just leave their account, or they'll let their account run out. But we've had to do these audits, and our finance department was able to provide us, we have a list of delinquents that come out now. So we're actually seeing the delinquent list. And in those cases, we'll go out, and they're usually about 30 to 40 a month that we see. We'll just go out and we'll leave tags at those addresses where there's a potential that the resident may or may not stop paying for service. And it's part of our normal inspection process anyway, so we're not sending our inspectors out there just for those accounts. So it's in addition to what they're normally doing, and that's worked out real well for us. We do have a frequent flyer. We call them frequent flyers. So we have a list of about 60 residents, or addresses, I should say, that we've notified, we've tagged. They don't have containers on site. We've actually turned those over to our code compliance, and we're working with them to get them straightened out the best we can. But I guess the keys that we've learned through this process, again, the cooperation with the private water companies, that was super important. I reached out to Surprise, because I know Bobby, you work with EPCOR over there as well, and I know you guys have some processes over there, and we're looking into that further to see if there's some way that can help us as well. We're also working with our drivers. Whenever they see containers out at some of these addresses, they just notify us so we can get out there. Co-compliance has been great. I have a meeting with them this week. They're looking forward to getting involved in this as well, because in some cases, not only is it impacting our solid waste, but it also impacts our sewer in some cases. So some of these addresses that aren't paying for solid waste are the same ones that aren't paying for sewer services as well. So we actually have several homes or several subdivisions that are set up that way. So it benefits the water side of the house as well. And just to give you an idea, so now we're starting to see consistent numbers with our inactives. Just to give you an idea, we roughly started with about a 4% inactive account average, and now we've completed, after all these audits, we've seen a number of less than 1%. So essentially, based on 34,000 accounts, we're up to 35,000 accounts total. But again, like I mentioned, there's 13,000 north of the freeway, so that's where we saw that decrease in inactives. And now moving forward with the maintenance, we're starting to see more consistent numbers. So next slide. That's pretty much it. I tried to cram in as much as I could, but again, we've been doing this off and on since 2006, and we've tried multiple different methods and approaches to tackle this issue. It may not apply to what city that you're in. We're if you control all the utilities, but this is just something that we've attacked, and we're pretty proud of what we've managed to accomplish. But is there any questions? Awesome.
Thank you, Adam. I think better if we cover all our utilities or not, we all have that challenge of residents that are trying to work the system to their advantage. So kudos to your team for making a big dip in that decrease of your inactive or non-paying accounts. And hopefully anyone that has an opportunity to give Adam or Goodyear any tips, I'm sure it'd be appreciated.
Can you hear me? This is Sherry Collins.
Hey, Sherry.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to raise my hand, but I don't know how to do that on here apparently. I have a question, please, Tracy, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Sherry.
Okay. Hey, Adam, so the city of Mesa went through something similar several years ago. We have a very small community that is a trash only account. City of Mesa does have our own utilities, but all of our own utilities, but there is a very tiny piece of the community that is serviced by Arizona Water Company. And maybe what you had experienced is they stopped paying, but we still were servicing the trash because we couldn't cut anything off, right? And the neighbors talked, I think, right? But what I was interested in, and it's an ongoing thing for us as well, but I just wanted to share that it was a struggle for us in that area too, and continues to be. But you said that you have a list of inactive accounts, and I think you said between 30 and 60 a month, but who did you say goes out and what was the process? Can you go through that again, and who goes out and talks to the customers?
Yeah, sure. And again, I would be happy to share everything that we've learned. Feel free to reach out to me after this presentation as well. I'm open to ideas if anyone's got any other ideas. But so what we essentially do is we have our inspectors that go out and do the inspections. We all have to do inspections for our variances with the county. So they go out and do that. But they're also doing container delivery. Since we monitor and do the container program as well, they're also doing container deliveries and exchanges while they're out there. So while they're in those areas, they have these lists of addresses that they're actively looking for to see if there's any activity, if there's cars at the house, if maybe it's up for sale, so then we can just check it off our list. But it's mainly our inspectors that are doing this. And then in some cases, so we do our bulk collections in-house. So if we have, say we have an open route or we have a light route that day, we'll sometimes use our bulk staff to go out with these addresses as well. I know Chris is on this call as well. He's worked really hard with our staff to make that a fluid program though. He's worked really hard on doing that. So did that answer your question?
It did. Yep. I thought that's who you said did it. So I just wanted to double check. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And one of the biggest keys was for us to get that information from the water providers as well. And sometimes there's a fee involved. I know I think you mentioned Arizona Water was the water provider. Is that who you said, Sherry? Yeah. Yeah, we have a small area where they provide water as well, and we haven't had very good luck discussing process with them, but with EPCOR and with Liberty, we managed to get a monthly list from them that shows their turn-ons, which is huge for us because then we can see the comparison between what we have in our system and what they have in theirs, and we use that list to essentially cut down on a lot of drive time, just knowing which addresses to keep an eye on.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Sherry, Adam, this is Bobby with Surprise.
Hey, Bobby.
So we have the outskirts, what we call those that only have sewer and don't have anything else. They have I think we have 11 water companies in Surprise, which makes it very tough, as you know. So we tried a kind of a can pull program for those ones that we couldn't get access to, trying to turn off, water and things like that. And it didn't go well. They would just take other people's cans and then they'd call it in and we'd have to give them another can. I don't know if you guys have tried that or if that has worked well for you guys and maybe we're just, we're doing it wrong.
So we do, again, we have the can pull if we can get the containers. So that's been a challenge. Sometimes the residents will hold on to those cans and hide them or do whatever, or that's where the drivers come in. We'll just give them the list of addresses. But Chris, maybe you can jump in on this, on the can pull side of things.
Well, yeah, we just, obviously that, we try to make that the last result. We found, the majority of them will sign up once they're notified. Once, everybody likes to think that they're invisible and nobody notices that they're, getting service and not paying for it. And what we found is, as little as a tag on their door, letting them know, hey, we see that you don't have service, you need to sign up for service. The majority of them sign up at that point. As far as the challenges of removing the cans, yeah, it is difficult, and that's where the quarterly audits come in. We'll see addresses that will come up, after multiple audits. The 60 that were turned over to code that Adam referred to, those have been inactive for over a year, and those same addresses showed up in the 4 audits we've done so far. So, at that point, in a lot of cases, we've already removed the cans, but, in some of them, we haven't removed the cans, and, we've kind of exhausted our resources. So that's when you reach out to code for help and their end. And yes, once you remove the cans, there are some that just go and grab their neighbor's can. And the one thing we have done is we'll get a missing can service order and recognize the street and realize what happened there. And we track all of our containers by serial number. So what I would do is schedule for the inspectors to go out on the next service day, and if those cans are on site, they would go ahead and just remove them again. I hope that answered your question, Bobby.
Yeah, it helps me to know that it's not us that has this challenge only, I guess.
It's a full-time thing. I mean, our inspectors are aware that, maintenance is the key to keeping it down. We've found, you got to stay on top of it. If you don't, then the numbers are just going to rise again. So, you just, every week, we have lists that we go out and we follow up.
Not only is a serious topic, but in City of Chandler, you pay a significant cost for an additional trash can. And we do audits through the drivers and our inspectors for people that have 2 cans but aren't paying for them, and sending those letters out. And most people pay, but the amazing excuses that people, a can just magically appeared at their house and they started using it for free. I think it's humorous, but usually it does through the letter and notification. But it's a challenge, I think, that everyone has for a variety of reasons. We're going to hear from Ramona, and then she's going to share some information from town of Queen Creek and their billing. And then there'll be opportunity for the rest of us to share any success or questions that the rest of our communities are facing. So Ramona, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hi, thanks. So, of course, this is not exactly the same process that Adam was talking about, because we do have 40,000 water customers, but only 24,000 solid waste customers. So our water service is actually bigger than the town limits. So early on in 2010, we did have a small area that was serviced by another water provider, but the town actually purchased that water company. So that helped take care of that. But I can feel your pain, because we had some of the similar issues trying to get information on what those accounts were doing. And so similar type of things that you were talking about, Adam, is providing letters either on the carts or mailed to say, hey, we noticed that you're not signed up for trash only. So it has, I recognize that that was difficult, and it did take the inspection process to figure that out, but that was only about a couple hundred. So it wasn't into the thousands like you're dealing with. So we just only had a taste of that. But we do have everyone on trash services is a water customer. We do have a real small number, less than 5 accounts that are on wells. And so they're not a water customer. So they are technically a trash customer only. But again, it's really easy to maintain those and make sure that they're paying, because we do still provide them a billing through our billing system that does for all of the water. So again, the best thing that we came up with, which I'm sure is in other communities, is how, when a payment is made by a resident, how does that get divvied onto out of their water bill? So the first line that is paid is taxes, then trash and recycling, then water, wastewater, then water. And so that way, if accounts get in arrears, it's almost always water or wastewater maybe. So that way, that gives us the authority to shut off their meter, and they can't come back onto service until all of their account is paid in full, because some of them try to send a letter, they're mad because they didn't get picked up one week or something, and they're like, I'm not paying for trash, and they won't pay that trash amount, but it doesn't matter because the payment is divvied in this way. So that has helped us with the conversations with residents when they say, well, I just was not paying my trash side. Well, that's not how your bill is allocated when we get the payment. So that has helped on that end. And then we do track the serial numbers to the accounts, and we also have now we're doing mobile inspections at the house, where we can send information directly to the resident via email. So we're going paperless, trying to walk the walk. But again, this is a little bit different than Adam is talking about, because for the vast majority, they are also water customers. And so we get all of that information when they sign up for water. But we did have, during the time period that we had that small area, we did work out an agreement with the water company. It was H2O Water, and to be able to get that information on the accounts of when people were moving in and out. And the problem is, it's like a daily thing, right? So it's not like you can get a monthly report and it makes sense. So it is a challenge working with a third-party provider, because those people are moving in and out. You do have some, we had winter visitors in that area as well, and we tried to find ways to put them on temporary discontinuance and then go and make sure someone else down the street wasn't using their carts. That, of course, is a big issue for everybody, no matter who we have. So I think you're exactly right that it just takes more inspection out there in the field, and to just see what we can work out with the hauler and the drivers. And so hats off to you, Adam, because it's a big task. I don't know if I helped her confuse the situation, but that's kind of what we're doing on our end in Queen Creek.
Thank you, Ramona. Does anybody have any questions or like to share any experiences that their cities or communities participate in? Okay. We're going to move on to Julie Hoffman from MAG, who is going to discuss the vacancy for the vice chair position.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This year, December 31st of this year, the chair and vice chair appointments will expire. And per MAG's policies and procedures, our vice chair, Bobby Parks with surprise, will ascend to the chair position, which will then open up the vice chair position. So included in your packet is a letter soliciting for a new vice chair that would be a 2-year term that would begin January 1st. If anybody's interested, please submit a letter of interest by October 25th. And in your packet is information on how to do that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any requests by membership for an item on a future agenda? Okay, if you think of it now, go ahead and email Julie or Lisa and let them know. Now is the time for committee members to report on activities of interest occurring in their agencies.
This is Rich Allen from the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. We are getting very close to having Republic Services reopen the recycling facility. So it's undergoing its final inspections. Don't know the exact date, but it's probably going to be in the next week or so. It'll get its certificate of at least temporary occupancy to start taking materials out there. The one item, I don't know if this is a for future items, but the issue of lithium batteries in the industry really needs to be addressed. I mean, they were testing their equipment earlier this summer and had another fire. Luckily, it didn't cause too much damage, but the education of our residents about not putting those things into their recycle barrels or their waste barrels and giving them a place to take those. I know some cities have permanent HHW facilities, some do events throughout the year, but there really needs to be a push on the education side. I know NWRA is trying to push legislation to go back after the manufacturers and the sellers of these products to create take back programs. Companies like Apple and that make the phones. You go to Home Depot and practically all the lawn equipment now is on renewable batteries. And there just needs to be something done because it's causing all sorts of issues. And I don't know about on the truck collection side, whether you guys are having fires as well, and that's extremely dangerous for the drivers. But we have them out on our site. I know Tucson, I've talked to them, they've had them, and they're very hard to put out. I did see some recently. There's some new fire extinguishers. I don't know how good they are and how expensive they are, but they claim they can put out a fire in a relatively quickly time, but it's just a big problem in the industry right now.
To your point, Rich, I think I was talking to someone and they were explaining that we think about loose batteries, we can drop them off at our HHW events or Best Buy and even like Home Depot. But people not being aware of that sometimes, an electric toothbrush or something that you recharge, that people don't really think through that there's a rechargeable battery inside of that. So they might toss something in, not realizing that it even, thinking of it has a battery that may cause an issue. So it's definitely something that we might be able to work together on getting some verbiage that we all share.
Yeah, I've actually had residents call and accidentally threw away their cell phone, and they have the tracking thing on it and they know exactly where it is, but it's already buried. Once it's buried, they're not going to ever get it back. But We even had one of the gentlemen that run one of those scooters that people rent in the cities, and people he's got track GPSs on those, and one of those ended up buried out in our landfill as well. So they're getting in, and every now and then we'll have a flare up in the waste for no particular reason, and it's extremely hard to put out, and it just causes a lot of issues. But it's even bigger issue in the recycling facilities.
Is JB on the call, Lisa? No. I wonder if ADQ has any, sometimes they'll get things from the EPA or start something on their own like they do with Sharp. So
They're having issues
follow up.
trying to get insurance for recycling facilities now because of all the fires that they've had. So.
And then Tracy, I know that our committee member, and Ramona, you might know, I can't remember if it's Evra or AZRC is taking interest on getting together on the outreach on these batteries. I don't remember which committee it was.
It might be AZRC. I don't think we mentioned it for East Valley Recycling Alliance. I have to call JB today or tomorrow anyhow about another issue. So I'll ask him if they have anything. We were looking for some Sharps information that they have, and there's some conflicting information out there. So we were trying to pass guidance on to our residents. And I'll ask them about that, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel if there's some, literature already out there that maybe we can utilize, or at least help out with that. And then, obviously each individual community can maybe work with their communications team. If you have a social media presence, that's a good message. I know we talk about hot loads or fires. We've had one at the transfer station at Republic, that's on a county island, but I had 2 fires since the summer, both small, but still something that we don't want. We push that out information all the time. Doesn't mean that we know exactly they came from a lithium ion, but more than likely, because we're seeing more. I know we contract with Waste Management. We had one last year, and they had a commercial fire in Chandler back in November that they lost the truck on a CNG truck. So that made quite a splash on social media from our residents. And we took that opportunity, even though they were picking up City of Chandler material, just another opportunity because it was, we have a CNG explosion on top of a truck. People took video of it, and it went around, and we took it. Luckily, no one was hurt. The truck was a total loss. But we took that opportunity to remind our residents about putting things not only in their can, but dropping off items in a dumpster that maybe they don't want to go to HHW or drop off at their local transfer station. So it's easy to drop off something in a commercial dumpster, and the risks of that, whether it be a battery or, incompatible material. Your material might be innocuous, but with your neighbor's material, those two things might not do well together. So I'll share that information if I find anything out from AZRC, and share if you remember where that's coming from, or we reach out, we can, I'll reach out today to both ADQ and AZRC and see if I can share anything with the committee.
Yeah, they had asked who was interested in joining in, and I'm like, Mesa is absolutely interested. So
if you find out anything, Sherry, if you could pass that along via email, if you find that would be great.
yeah, I will.
We probably all got it, but sometimes
I get it.
This is Ramona. Along those lines, AZRC and AZ Swana are partnering on a vendor show and a symposium, October 26th and 27th. You can go to the AZRC website to register. I can't remember exactly, but I know there's a lot of topics along those lines of outreach and education, and then trying to work together on common goals. So put that on your calendar, October, because we're not meeting again before then in this group, but AZRC has it available on their website, and we're also looking for sponsors. So if you have vendors that you could reach out to as well. We're looking for sponsorship for that vendor show and our partnership with AZRC and AZ Swana. So
Ramona, can you remind everybody where that is located at?
it's going to be at the Mesa Convention Center. And it'll be all day Thursday and half a day on Friday, the 26th and 27th.
Thank you.
And then Tracy, I just found, to piggyback up off what Ramona said, it was basically Alexis in the city of Phoenix had talked about it being a good idea to discuss for the cities to partnership. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I read that wrong. Never mind. I'll just email you.
Thank you. Any other communities want to share any news or upcoming information?
Also share just real quick, get things going. So Town of Queen Creek, we're partnering with ASU at the Polytech campus out here to work on a chloroplast recycling project where they have worked in their lab here and trying to find ways to reuse those types of chloroplast signage, election type signage, all the signages that we use for our events and other things. And now we can't do anything with them, right? So they're working on a project with Goodwill and actually creating a space inside of Goodwill to do that on a bigger scale. So we're partnering with them, try to see how that program can work with some of our volunteer groups. So keep you posted on anything that comes of that. They're trying to upscale their smaller. Right now, it's just like a one-man show with some volunteers at ASU. So keep you informed on that.
Hey, it's Robert, City of Buckeye. Want to let you know we are currently working with Burns and McDonald to do a pretty thorough review of our internal processes for all of our trash services and just making sure that what we're providing is up to speed with current needs and market. And they're also going to be assisting us with our next RFP, which should be created pretty soon for our next long-term solid waste contract. So that's what we're working on right now. And so far it's going pretty well. And thank you, I believe Surprise and Goodyear and maybe Avondale, and I think maybe Phoenix may have been questioned to try to provide us some benchmarking data. So I appreciate you all participating with that for those of you that did. Thank you very much. That's it for Buckeye.
Hello, this is Bobby with Surprise. Most people know we went out for an RFP for recycling services to process our recycling in the future. So that's ongoing. I guess update will be later. Also, we are currently in the middle of a rate plan for our FY 25 to FY 29 rates. We did outsource that with a vendor who will be doing that. So we're trying to work on growth and inflation and costs so we can capture all that in our next rates. So we're in the middle of that. And then we do have our fall House of Hazardous Waste event curbside collection coming up in October, but that's all that we have.
So this is Sherry from the City of Mesa. So like Bobby recommended, City of Mesa is also working on their rates for both residential and commercial. Ours is done on an annual basis, and we do those in-house. So we're looking at presenting those to our committees and councils. Effective date on those will be in January. One of the large projects we're working on in partnership with Gilbert is looking at designing a MRF and transfer station at the city-owned property of Pecos and Sossaman on the northwest corner. So currently we're working on a 15% design for that. And then also our department works out of a single yard, and Mesa is pretty big, and we have a pretty big population, so we're growing pretty big in the Southeast Valley. So we're looking at splitting our operation. So we're working on the design for a split operation. So hopefully within the next 2.5 years, we'll have 2 operational centers, one out of the east and one out of the west. And then in that, looking at designing a transfer station at that East Mesa Service Center as well. Those are some of the big things we're working on.
City of Chandler is also looking at rate increases. We were able to postpone some of those through some different changes a couple years ago, but it is now time, as Bobby said, the inflation and other things have increased. We had some public information, and that's going forward to start in January. And information will be public information. We're also getting ready next month to have I know a lot of you that have HHW facilities do a swap shop. We don't have that yet, but we're doing a giveaway event at least twice a year, and we're getting ready to do one in October. I'll make that public as soon as we have that date set, where our residents can come and take up to 10 items of HHW, gently or new items for their use. And that's been quite successful. And we've done it a few times since then. And tomorrow, as Rick said, I'll be looking at Republic Services MRF coming out tomorrow with their staff to look, since our contract has been with them since January, and material is currently being processed in Tucson, but starting to move over to Salt River and up and running. We'll be looking at the new technology. So excited to see that as well. Last call for anyone to share anything. Okay, business is now concluded. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn. Rich Allen.
Do I have a second?
Second to adjourn, Sherry Collins.
Thank you. Our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.